I wanna see the light. See the light.
Right, yo, welcome back to another video. This is part 2 of the road to Teesside. I'll just get straight to the point. As you can see, I am not in the 13 today. The 13 is finished, ready for Teesside as far as I'm aware. It's got a few little teething problems that I'll sort out when I get to the track, but I'll just talk you through roughly what I've been doing. So at the end of the last video I had mentioned the subframe was going in. That was my first job, so first things first, I removed the old subframe. I'm going to be banging loads of pictures on the screen at the same time, just as a heads up as things start flying on the screen. I will include a few little videos as well, but so far I'll just talk you through the subframe. So the subframe, that was fully stripped other than the bushes, and it was painted gold. It then had the Skyline diff, which was welded, fitted to it, titanium bolts, try and make it a bit stronger, and just quite simply because I couldn't get a hold of the Skyline bolts that easy. I then managed to source some drive shafts, so it was going pretty good up until that point. That was the straightforward bit. I then installed the subframe. I managed to do it by myself for anybody who's wanting to give it a go. It's not as impossible as you'd imagine. Undoubtedly it is quite hard on your own, but you can do it, and I did it in the street, so realistically it's not impossible, so don't let it put you off. The frame went in relatively easy. Had to wrestle it past the exhaust because I left half the exhaust in place, but that was a really easy thing getting it in. I was pleasantly surprised. Right, it is I think it's about 10 to 12. I'm absolutely freezing, but as you can see, subframe is back in the car. So I've been working most of the night, got the subframe in place, it's all bolted up, diff's already on it, so it's just a matter of just bolting the prop shaft on, and then I think I'm going to go back in the house because I'm absolutely freezing. But my ass is frozen to the floor, but other than that, it's not too bad. Yay, nearly there though, so yeah, getting there. So that was all done at the same time as cleaning the rear wheel arches up. It's not a very thrilling job cleaning the rear wheel arches up, so I'm not talking about much. Basically just clean the rust off, treat all the areas, and then paint them and stone chip them and seal them up. So I'll bang a little picture in just so you can see. While I was doing the subframe, I thought I might as well tidy the suspension up, so tidied all the suspension up, put new toe arms on, managed to find I think it was the passenger side front toe arm of the rear suspension had a little bend in it off the original crash, so replaced them. Managed to get some off the in there with dust boots on as well, which makes it feel a little bit better. A lot of the stuff was powder coated where possible, so little bits and bobs that needed doing, like the camber arms, they were worse for wear, they got powder coated. The lower control arm, they were Jap Speed ones, they rusted like nobody's business. If you are getting the Jap Speed arms, coat them in ACF 50 or some kind of anti-rusting agent, because they do not last 5 minutes, the paint comes straight off them. But yeah, they were tidied up, cleaned up, painted in anti-rust primer, and then a nice coat of gold to make them all shiny and nice, so they turned out lovely. Drive shafts were bolted in, everything seemed like it was going quite well. Then I realised the brake shoes for the handbrake were a little past the best, so while I was in there I decided just to get them taken out, get them all replaced, so that I know I've got a good handbrake, because I have had a handbrake fail before on a drift day, and that's how I ended up going into the gravel. That's one of my favourite pitches, but yeah, still it was a bit sad at the time. So yeah, handbrake shoes done, looking good. All the brakes back together on the rear end, all the suspension replaced where possible, it needed doing. The coilover's got a good scrubbing, spraying with oil. I am going to get the springs powder coated next year in the summer, just the time was running out, so that got put to one side. I was a bit on the fence about replacing the anti-roll bar or getting it powder coated. It was a bit worse for wear. The options were powder coat the original, which would have been about £30, or just keep an eye on eBay, which I did, and I managed to pick up uprated front and rear anti-roll bar for £80, so it wasn't a bad deal. That came with brand new bushers, brand new clamps, so I didn't need to get any of the clamps powder coated or anything like that. So that has saved me a little bit of money and given us a performance upgrade as well at the same time. Since I was putting the anti-roll bar on, I also went ahead and threw some new links on there as well, just to tighten everything up at the rear end. I then came to a moment of realisation. Sadly, the works Euro lines that were on, the tyres were playing hello chord, so they are getting finished off on the drift day. They're not all the way through the chord, but due to the alignment being so poor, they are starting to get to the point of no return. So I'm just going to demolish them on Teesside, hopefully tomorrow. But because of that, I went and put some tyres on the VS SDs, so they are now on the rear. I had planned to re-lip them, but to be honest, they fit the car quite nice how they are, so I think I'm just going to roll with them as is. Can't really fault them, they look lovely. Just need to get some tyres mounted on the front ones, which have a slightly less aggressive lip, and they'll look nice in place. So that pretty much finished off the rear end. It went nice and straightforward. It was just very time consuming. That brought us to the front end, so there was a lot more to do than what actually got done, but I'll just talk you through what I've got done, and then in the future I may be able to squeeze a few more little videos in here and there of us doing a few bits of jobs on them. But for now, we'll focus on the exhaust. So my exhaust, as you probably heard it in the last video, is loud. That is not by choice, that is quite simply the exhaust is blowing, or was blowing. Well, I think this is why gasket's leaking. Absolutely ruined. Gutted. Off it comes. It had blown out the copper gasket. It was a fantastic gasket. I got a Slide Motorsport. It held up well, but I didn't have a flexi joint in my exhaust, and it was hitting off the floor, so the impacts were having a very adverse effect on the gasket. So nice and simple. I managed to very quickly grab some gaskets from a local import car place, genuine Nissan ones. I didn't have time to go and get another copper one from Slide or order one. It was over the holidays, so you know what people are like, they shoot for the holidays, or the postman's a bit rubbish. So it was a matter of just urgency. So I replaced the manifold gaskets and the turbo gaskets. I also realised whilst I was in at the turbo that the wastegate actuator wasn't adjusted correctly, so it wasn't allowing it to fully close, which was probably why I was losing a bit of boost. So I've rectified that, and I can assure you it feels so much better. I drove it a little bit yesterday and it felt so much more responsive, and it made loads of stupid pigeon noises when you shut the throttle off, so can't really argue with that. To try and rectify the gasket killing issue, I've decided to make a custom exhaust, kind of just out of the blue, kind of decided. So I've made a flexi jointed elbow, which was really quite easy to do if I'm honest, so anybody fancying doing it, I strongly recommend it. It keeps the flexi up off the ground away from where it's going to catch and rip it apart. I then made a very low like front pipe, I think you would class it as, because it used to be classed as down pipe, but it's more of just a front pipe now. That is sitting very close to the body, so it gives me a lot of good clearance. I've converted it to V-band clamps as well, which seem to be a lot easier to align and adjust. It's made my life a lot easier if I'm honest. I know there's a lot of hate out there for them, but I can't personally knock them, so I'm quite happy with them. Yeah, so I had a bit of a chew with the exhaust. It was drooping in places. I just added a hanger in the middle. It rectified nearly all the issues. I was trying to do it on my back as well and take the exhaust on and off to go and cut it, weld it. That doesn't work. So strongly recommend you just jack the car up on its side and then try and do it in situ, at least tack it in place. So that brings us up to roughly where we're at. Not a lot else really gone on. A little bit I should have added in the last video was I did put a rear bash bar on, so that's a jack and point bash bar, and I will put a picture here. It looks fantastic. It came from Drift Fab and came together lovely. So that is the Road to Teesside part 2, and thankfully in the next video we will be seeing the car sideways. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this little update, and I'll see you all at Teesside. Catch you out.
I wanna see the light.